Elias stood alone in the quiet of Workshop Bay 7, the hum of power converters his only companion. Each morning he arrived before dawn, slipping past the dim bulkhead lights to check the station's fuel cells and recalibrate tired circuits. He was known as the best engineer on Gauntlet 6, a dusty orbital outpost where freighters drifted in for quick repairs. Yet despite his skill, Elias kept to himself. He ate his meals at the workbench and spent evenings watching distant stars swirl beyond the viewports. No one ever joined him until the day two small starships drifted in, their power cores flickering like dying candles. When the twin girls stepped onto the grated floor of his workshop, Elias paused mid-bolt. They wore identical uniforms of pale lavender and silver trim, their dark hair tied back in intricate braids. Their wide eyes glowed with concern as they examined the sparks dancing around his tools. Neither spoke his language, but their worry was clear. They motioned at the ships they had guided in from the outer rim, pointing at the failing energy gauges and then at their hearts. Elias understood at once. They needed help, and they had nowhere else to go. He knelt beside the first ship, lifting its access panel to expose the cooling coils. The system was unstable. Any push of power might overload the grid. He glanced at the twins, whose faces held both hope and fear. With a nod, he told them to stand by. He rerouted auxiliary power through a makeshift converter and slowly edged the energy levels upward. The station shuddered, its lights dimming as the draw taxed the old reactors. Outside, a cargo transport drifted past, its pilot eyeing the flicker of Gauntlet 6's lights with impatience. But Elias did not waver. He adjusted the focus on his plasma torch and whispered soft encouragement to himself, as if coaxing a wild animal into calm. Hours passed in a blur of sweat and static. When the core finally stabilized, the first ship gave a low, contented hum. The girls pressed their palms against the transparent panel, their lips curving into smiles that felt like sunlight. Elias allowed himself a weary grin in return. He moved to the second vessel, and though fatigue weighed on his shoulders, he found fresh determination in their eyes. By the time the workshop doors slid closed at midnight, both starships glowed with renewed energy. Breathing life once more into long-abandoned circuits, the twins would not leave. They hovered at his bench, offering small, ornate trinkets. Carved from a pearlescent shell, Elias accepted them with gentle thanks, even though he could not name the gift. In their soft language, they spoke of ancient customs and binding oaths. He caught fragments words that sounded like home, family, promise, though he did not understand. The warmth of their voices wrapped around him. He found himself wondering what it would feel like to belong somewhere, to have someone wait for him beyond the next repair job. When dawn crept in through the portholes, Elias wiped his hands on a rag and met the twins at the edge of the bay. Their faces glowed in the pale light, and one reached out to touch his sleeve, her touch gentle but firm. In that moment, he felt the stir of something deep inside, pride, perhaps, or the spark of a connection he had long forgotten. They did not rush him away. Instead, they waited as if every second mattered. He watched the nebula beyond the station shimmer in pink and gold, and he knew his life had shifted. As the two starships lifted off, their engines humming in harmony, the twins stood at the rail of their launch pads and waved. Elias raised his hand in farewell, heart pounding. He realized then that he had done more than fix machines. He had offered kindness in a place that forgot what kindness meant. And though he remained on Gauntlet 6, he would carry the memory of their gratitude like a second skin, a reminder that even in the silent reaches of space, no one is truly alone. Elias woke to the gentle tapping of tiny boots on the grated floor outside his workshop. He rubbed the sleep from his eyes and found the twins waiting by his door, their lavender uniforms neat despite the long night. One held a small lantern of bioluminescent algae. The other carried a platter of glowing fruit that pulsed like distant stars. Elias glanced at his clock still before breakfast hour. Yet the sight of their eager faces stirred something warm in his chest. They gestured for him to follow, bodies leaning forward with polite insistence. Curious, Elias swept his tools aside and trailed them through the tunnel to their starship's communal deck. The air inside smelled faintly of spice and honeyed nectar, a scent both foreign and comforting. At a low table, cushions of soft fabric invited him to sit. The twins motioned for him to recline, then guided the glowing platter closer. Elias picked up a slice of the luminous fruit, its skin cool and smooth. When he bit into it, sweetness flooded his senses, like sunlight melting frost. The twins clapped, their hands softly and traded delighted glances. Elias laughed at their joy, the sound echoing in the curved metal walls. As he ate, one twin tapped a small hala projector, and pale images of their homeworld glowed in midair. Towering crystal spires, violet forests, and rivers of liquid light shimmered before him. They call it Lyra 9. Sella's voice chimed in broken basic English, her accent gentle as a lullaby. Seer, I placed a slender hand on her sister's arm and added, "It is our cradle, where we grew up." Elias nodded and inked a small symbol in his datapad. He offered it to them, a simple sketch of the fruit's leaf, hoping to share something of his own world. Their eyes widened as they studied the drawing, and when Sella mouthed his name properly, Lee, as his heart swelled, over bowls of spiced broth, they traded stories through broken phrases and animated gestures. Elias described the swirling gas bands of Jupiter. The twins gasped at the memory, as if they had seen it themselves. In return, Sari acted out the dance of Lyra 9's twin moons, spinning on her heels until light from the lanterns blurred into ribbons. His chest tightened watching her smooth motion, elegant as drifting stardust. When the meal ended, the twins offered him a slender flute filled with a sparkling drink that tasted of petals and clear water. They raised the flutes in unison, a toast to new friendship. Elias hesitated, then sipped. The liquid washed over him like a cool breeze, chasing away the last of his loneliness. He felt light, as if the weight of Gauntlet 6's isolation had lifted. Night settled outside the vessel, and the trio sat together beneath the viewports. Beyond the transparent hull, distant suns traced slow arcs across the black canvas. Elias pointed to a cluster of stars and said, "That's Orion's belt." The twins leaned close, lips parted in wonder. For a moment, language fell away. All three watched the silent ballet of light, connected by something deeper than words. When he finally stood to leave, the twins rose as well and pressed small tokens into his hands. A silver braid from their uniforms woven into identical bracelets. Elias looked at the delicate craftsmanship, then at their hopeful faces. He fastened the bracelets around his wrist and felt a gentle tug at his soul. They had invited him into their world, offering trust and warmth. In return, he realized he wanted more than the brief thrill of fixing starships. He wanted to belong somewhere, among friends who saw him as more than just an engineer. As he stepped back into the corridor, bracelets warming his skin, Elias understood that this unexpected invitation marked the beginning of something profound. The twins had bridged the gap between distant cultures with simple kindness, and now he carried their friendship like a guiding star, shining through the quiet corridors of Gauntlet 6. Each morning, Elias unlocked the heavy hatch to the station's outer corridor and found Sari and Sella already waiting. Their bright eyes followed his every step as he guided them past docking clamps and fuel lines. They listened intently as he explained the complex grid that powered Gauntlet 6. When he paused to tighten a leaking valve, they knelt beside him, mimicking his movements with tiny wrenches. Elias felt a gentle pride swell in his chest. He had never imagined teaching anyone the delicate art of station maintenance, least of all to alien sisters, whose whole world now seemed to revolve around him as they moved along the narrow walkway. The twins marveled at every human custom. They pointed in wonder at the yellow hazard stripes painted on bulkheads and the utilitarian posters warning of vacuum breaches. When a service drone whirred past with a cargo pallet, Sari reached out as if to touch its smooth metal hull. Sella pressed her palm against the drone's side and whispered a soft greeting. Elias chuckled at their fascination. He realized how rarely he paused to admire the simple beauty of his daily work. Through their fresh eyes, every corner of the station felt new and alive at the heart of the engine room. Under the glow of red warning lamps, Elias showed them how to solder a fractured hatch switch. The workshop smelled of heated flux and raw metal, He guided Ceri's hand as she fed the solder wire, then helped Sela adjust the torch's flame. Their faces were inches from the glowing tip, not with fear, but with pure wonder. When each switch sparked back to life, the twins gasped and clapped. In that moment, Elias felt a thrill he had not known since he first learned his trade, the power of creation shared with eager learners. During their lunch break in the central hub, the twins listened as Elias described Earth's vast oceans and green forests. He sketched rolling hills on a scrap of datapad and watched their jaws drop when he mentioned rain. "Water falls from the sky," Ceri whispered, eyes wide. "Yes," he nodded, smiling at her delight. Then Sela held up her hand palm facing him and traced a small circle, her way of asking to learn more. Elias paused, surprised by how much he wanted to show her. Pictures of desert storms, videos of hidden waterfalls, the laughter of children running in summer heat. By mid-afternoon, word of their lessons had spread. Other engineers peeked through the viewport, curious at the sight of twin alien students studying human machinery. Elias felt a momentary tug of embarrassment, and then a burst of gratitude. He had spent years alone, perfecting his work in silence. Now he was a teacher, a friend, and in their eager eyes, he saw genuine respect. For the first time, he felt seen, not merely as the station's best mechanic, but as a person with knowledge worth sharing. When his shift ended, Elias led Ceri and Sela to a high platform overlooking the swirling nebula beyond Gauntlet 6. They settled on a wide beam, the cool metal pressing through their uniforms. As the orange and purple gases drifted past, the twins leaned against him, each resting a hand on his shoulder. Elias closed his eyes, letting the gentle pressure ground him. Above them, distant stars blinked in silent rhythm, and he felt connected too. The universe, to these two strangers, turned companions, and to something larger than any single life. In the fading glow of nebula light, Elias realized how much his world had changed in just a few days. He was no longer the solitary engineer who ate alone in Workshop Bay 7. He was part of an unexpected family, bound by shared laughter, whispered questions, and the simple joy of learning together. As the nebulous colors deepened, he whispered a quiet promise. He would protect these sisters and guide them through any dark corridor. And in turn, they had opened his heart to the warmth of true companionship, an emotion he would carry with him forever. Late that afternoon, as Elias tightened the last bolt on a service conduit, the twins hovered close by, their faces lined with worry rather than excitement. Ceri traced the cool metal with her fingertips, then turned to him, her wide eyes bright. With unspoken words, paused and raked a hand through his hair, sensing an unspoken urgency. They wanted to speak, but hesitation held their tongues. When his repairs were done, Elias led them to a quiet corner of the station's observation deck. The viewports framed the galaxy's swirling colors, brilliant pinks bleeding into rich purples. He motioned for them to sit on a low bench beneath the curved glass. Ceri took a deep breath and spoke in fractured basic English, on Lyra 9. When one saves both lives of twins in danger, a bond is made forever. Sela's voice trembled as she added, "It is the right of the twin flame." Neither twin fully met his gaze. Elias frowned, heart ticking faster. He recalled their failed cores and the hours he had spent pulling power from the station's grid. He had only wanted to help. He had not known he was participating in an ancient ceremony. They explained that by stabilizing both starships known to their culture as individual flame vessels, Elias had unknowingly fulfilled the ritual's requirements. Under Xerius law, the twins could claim the Saver as their guardian, pledging lifelong loyalty in return for that salvage of life. In their gentle culture, such a bond allowed sisters to gain a protector who shared their destiny. Elias closed his eyes. He felt the weight of it all settle on his shoulders. Loyalty was something he had never asked for. He was a loner by habit, a man who fixed machines and avoided attachments. Yet, when he opened his eyes again, he saw only the earnest hope in Ceri's face and the shy expectation in Sela's. He could not turn away. Station security officers appeared at the far end of the deck, their dark uniforms crisp against the soft nebula light. One cleared his throat, glancing at the twins and then at Elias. "Engineer," he said, voice flat. "Your guests are delaying their departure. Protocol states diplomatic missions may overstay by 12 hours. After that, we must intervene." Elias stood and smoothed his uniform. He understood their concern whom familiar customs could unsettle the station's delicate politics. He turned back to Sari and Sella. "I will help you explain," he promised softly. He guided them toward the station administrator's office, bracelets jingling on his wrist. Inside, he spoke patiently, translating their words and the ancient rite's meaning. The administrator listened, brow furrowed, then nodded. "Very well," she said. "The right of the twin flame is recognized under the peace accord. Their guardian may remain until the ceremony is formalized." Relief washed over the twins. They grasped his hands, voices trembling as they said, "Thank you," in their melodic tongue. Elias felt their warmth flow into him like starlight. Once the administrator released them, the twins led him back to their ships. They paused beneath an arch of climbing vines and artificial garden they had created in the docking bay. Saru and Sella exchanged shy looks, then placed slender hands on each side of his face. Their touch was gentle, respectful, and filled with meaning he could almost understand in his bones. "We trust you," Sari whispered. "We choose you." Sella's eyes shone as she added, "Be our guardian, Elias." His heart thudded against his chest. In that soft garden beneath the station's lights, he knelt and bowed his head. He felt tears prick his eyes even as his lips curved into a smile. "I accept," he said simply. As the overhead lights shifted from day to night cycle, Elias stood, bound by a promise older than most civilizations. The twins slipped bracelets around his wrists matching the ones he had given them. He felt the cool metal press against his skin, a reminder of bonds forged in kindness and trust. When they parted that evening, the twins returned to their vessels, and Elias watched their starships light up like twin beacons. He felt pride bloom within him. He was no longer just an engineer on Gauntlet 6. He was their guardian, chosen by two sisters who had seen in him the power to Sci-Fi when he had only meant to offer simple help. And in that promise, he found a new purpose among the silent stars. Elias arrived at Workshop Bay 7 to find the twins already there, transforming his quiet space into a small celebration. Sari draped glowing vines along the metal beams, and Sella placed delicate glass orbs filled with floating motes of light on his workbench. The soft glow painted his tools in warm hues, and for a moment he felt as if he'd stepped into a starry garden rather than a repair bay. He smiled at their careful hands, touched by how they honored him as their guardian. As he settled at his bench, the twins hovered close, eyes bright with excitement. They had brought new machines, small exploration probes they wanted him to inspect before departure. Elias picked up the first probe, turning it over in his hands. Its casing bore twin flame symbols, the same designs on their bracelets. He ran his fingers along the engraved lines and thought of the day he first met them. When their gratitude lit something inside him he did not know was missing. He powered on the probe and listened to its soft hum. Sari placed a hand on his shoulder. Steadying his focus, he explained each gauge and circuit, pointing out how to fine-tune the sensor array. The twins asked questions, their voices overlapping in eager harmony. Elias paused to let them speak, delighting in their curiosity. When Sella asked why the calibration routines took so long, he laughed and showed her how to speed up diagnostic scans without losing accuracy. Mid-morning, the station's PA system crackled to life, announcing a visitor's arrival. Elias and the twins exchanged glances. A diplomatic envoy from the Xyrius Empire had come to finalize the rite of the twin flame, and everyone on Gauntlet 6 buzzed with gossip. Engineers peeked through the workshop's viewport, whispering as they saw the glowing vines and the small crowd of curious onlookers. Elias felt a flush of embarrassment, even while his heart swelled with pride. He was no longer a lone mechanic. He was part of something important, a bond recognized across worlds. Waved to his colleagues, offering a shy grin, and then refocused. On the probes, aware of the twins' hopeful eyes on him, over lunch, The twins led him to a quiet corner of the docking bay, where a small garden module waited. Inside, bioluminescent plants climbed over metal trellises, their tendrils shimmering in soft blues and greens. A table held 2 bowls of fragrant stew and steaming bread. The twins motioned for him to sit, and Elias accepted, settling onto a cushion beside them. They ate in comfortable silence, broken only by the occasional thank you in their melodic tongue. Elias realized how peaceful this felt. Long ago, he had given up on feeling at home. He believed Gauntlet 6 was too rough, too isolated. But here, sharing a simple meal in this gentle garden, he felt safe and wanted. As they finished, Sari reached into her uniform pocket and pulled out a small music box etched with the same flame motif. She wound it carefully, and a soft melody filled the air notes, drifting like stardust. Elias closed his eyes and let the music wash over him. When it ended, he heard quiet sniffles from Sela. He opened his eyes to find tears in her gaze. "She wishes to thank you," Sari said softly, translating. Sela offered the music box to Elias for saving us and becoming our guardian. Elias held the gift with trembling hands. He pressed it to his chest, feeling the pulse of its tiny gears beneath his palm. Their moment was interrupted by the hiss of the docking clamp releasing. The Envoy shuttle touched down with a gentle thud. A group of dignitaries in flowing robes emerged, their faces calm and respectful. They approached, the 3 of them, led by a tall figure with silver hair braided like the twins. The elder smiled at Elias, her eyes kind. "Guardian Elias," she said in perfect basic English. "By the authority of the Xyrius Council, I welcome you into our family. Your bond with my daughters is now recognized across our empire." She bowed slightly, and the twins mirrored her gesture. Elias felt tears prick his eyes. He bowed in return. "I am honored," he replied, voice thick with emotion. The dignitaries offered small gifts, medallions forged from star metal and scrolls, bearing formal pledges of friendship. Elias accepted each one with gratitude, overwhelmed by the weight of their respect. As the ceremony ended, the twins took his hands and led him back to the workshop. The Envoy remained behind to finalize the departure details, leaving Elias with the sisters he had come to love. They arranged the probes on his bench and stood back, eyes shining. "Will you travel with us to Lyra 9? Sela asked, her voice hopeful but timid. "As our guardian and brother." Elias looked around. The familiar workshop, the tools, the vines, the orbs of light, and then back at the twins, whose trust in him had grown stronger than gravity. He thought of lonely nights spent under cold stars, and how those days felt as distant as dreams.
Ow.
Here with them, every corner of his heart felt alive. He took a steady breath and smiled. "Yes," he said softly, "I will go with you." In that moment, the walls of Gauntlet 6 seemed to fade away, leaving only the promise of new horizons and the warmth of a chosen family. Each morning, Elias rose before the station's bustle to prepare for departure. Today, however, the twins waited at Workshop Bay 7 with bright smiles and anxious eyes. Their probes were packed and ready, sensors gleaming under the overhead lights. But before they could leave, Sela pressed a small data tablet into Elias's hand. "Your journey," she said softly, "begins with our home story." They guided him through the station's corridors to the shuttle bay, where their own starship waited among rows of freighters. As the airlock hissed shut behind them, Elias felt the gentle press of recycled air, a reminder that he was no longer alone. The twins led him to a private cabin lined with soft cushions and glowing panels. On one wall, a holographic map of Lyra 9 shimmered, its continents and oceans traced in violet and gold. Sarai tapped the map, and rivers of light traced pathways from the landing port to distant crystal cities. She explained how she and Sela had grown beneath glass domes, learning science and art from teachers who spoke in song. Elias pressed his palm to the display, imagining the warmth of their world. He thought of his own lonely nights on Gauntlet 6, when the only light came from malfunctioning panels and cold starlight. Now, he felt a hope he had never known. As the engines rumbled to life, Sela brought him a cylindrical case wrapped in soft leather, Inside lay a small instrument, 2 strings, stretched over a polished wood frame. "This is called a heart lyre," she said, her voice trembling. "On Lyra 9, music carries our feelings. We want you to learn our songs." Elias accepted the lyre, turning it slowly in his hands. He'd never been a musician, but he felt its familiar weight, much like the tools he trusted back on the station. Over the next hours, the ship glided past asteroid fields and through streams of cosmic dust. Elias sat beside Sela and Sari in the cabin's glow, his fingers pressing tentative notes on the lyre's strings. The twins hummed gentle melodies, teaching him each chord. When he hit a wrong note, they exchanged encouraging smiles and guided his hand back on track. In that soft chamber, their voices wove into the music, and Elias felt tears fill his eyes. Music had never moved him so deeply. They shared stories of their childhood visits to floating gardens, where flowers glowed under twin moons. Sari described the festival of light, when families painted lanterns with their hopes for the year ahead. Sela's eyes misted as she recalled her mother's soft lullabies at bedtime. Elias listened, heart pounding, imagining lanterns drifting across a violet sky. He realized each memory was a gift, one they trusted him to carry with them. As the ship cleared the outer rim of Gauntlet 6's sector, the twins grew quiet. Outside the viewports, the nebula's colors faded into the deep black of uncharted space. Sela took Ilias's hand and pressed a small pendant into his palm, a crystal shard that pulsed with pale light. "This is our home's heart," he said. "Keep it close, and you will always find your way back to us." Elias stared at the glowing shard, its light reflecting in his eyes. He pressed it to his chest, feeling its gentle warmth. In that moment, the hum of the engines and the silent expanse of space felt like the softest embrace. He understood what it meant to carry a home in your heart, even when you traveled among the stars. Night fell within the cabin as the ship's internal lights dimmed. The twins curled beside him on a plush bench, each resting an arm across his lap. Elias closed his eyes and let their quiet breathing lull him into peace. He had journeyed far from Workshop Base 7, but in their gentle company. He felt he had arrived exactly where he belonged. Tomorrow, they would set foot on Lyra 9. Together, Elias smiled in the dark, knowing that whatever awaited them, they would face it as a family bound by kindness, music, and unwavering trust. Elias woke before dawn, his breath catching as the twin sisters guided him down the starship's gangway. The air outside was soft and warm, carrying the scent of violet blossoms that drifted on the breeze. He blinked once, then again, as if the world before him might vanish. A field of glowing petals stretched to the horizon, painted in gentle purples and silvers beneath 2 pale moons. Sari slipped her arm through his and smiled. "Welcome home, guardian," she whispered. Elias's chest tightened, and he swallowed hard. Home. The word felt tender. Like a secret shared between his heart and the rising sun, they led him along a path of polished stones that glowed faintly underfoot. Lantern trees arched overhead, their petals unfolding at each step. Sela pointed to walls of old crystal carved into towers that caught the morning light, scattering rainbows across the soft grass. Elias steadied himself against a marble railing, awe filling every part of him. He had fixed broken starships, calmed raging power cores, and soothed solitary hearts, but nothing in his past had prepared him for this gentle wonder. At the heart of the city stood a vast hall whose doors were carved with the twin flame symbol he had seen on bracelets and probes. Sari paused before the doors and reached for his hand. "Here we pledge your bond," she said softly. Inside, the marble floor was inlaid with silver filigree, and crystal chandeliers drifted overhead like frozen starlight. The elder with braided silver hair stood waiting, flanked by dignitaries in flowing robes of lavender and gold. Elias felt the hush in the chamber and straightened his shoulders. He stepped forward between the sisters. The elder's eyes shone with pride and kindness as she spoke in clear, resonant tones. "By the right of the twin flame, Elias of Earth is forever bound to Sari and Sela of Lyra 9. May his strength guard them, and theirs inspire him." As she spoke, Sari and Sella placed their hands over his heart, and Elias pressed his palms against theirs in return. Light flickered in the crystal above, as if the building itself acknowledged their promise. When the words ended, the elder presented Elias with a woven cloak of silver-threaded fabric. He draped it around his shoulders and felt its soft weight settle like a promise. Outside, the city stirred in celebration. Musicians tuned delicate instruments that sang like wind through reeds. Children danced with lanterns that floated above their heads. Vendors offered sweet pastries made from moonberries and spiced nectar. Elias tasted one and felt warmth bloom in his belly, sweet, tangy, and new, like the taste of belonging. As twilight fell beneath the twin moons, Sari and Sella led Elias to a hill overlooking the city's outer walls. The lantern trees glowed around them, and the petals at their feet seemed to pulse in time with their hearts. Sella raised a small crystal vial, its contents swirling with soft blue light. "Our home's tears," she said gently. "Keep them, so we remember even in dark times." Elias took the vial and held it close. He thought of every moment that had brought him here, the lonely nights in Workshop Base 7, the fear in their eyes when their starships failed, and the hope that flickered between them as he recalibrated their cores. He remembered teaching them to solder, sharing his meals, learning their songs. Each memory felt like a ray of starlight guiding him to this place. Sari leaned her head against his shoulder. "We are one family," she said. Elias closed his eyes, feeling the soft weight of her braid against his arm. He realized that family was not only those you were born with, but those who chose you and whom you chose in return. They sat in silence as the moons rose higher, their pale light mingling with the lantern trees' glow. Elias opened the crystal vial and let a single drop land on his palm, shimmered for an instant, then disappeared. He whispered a quiet vow. He would protect this world, these sisters, and the promise they had woven together. When he opened his eyes, the twins were smiling, their faces alight with trust. Elias stood and held out his arms. They stepped forward and embraced him, each wrapping an arm around his waist. In that trio of warmth and light, Elias felt every lonely moment of his past melt away. Under the twin moons of Lyra 9, Elias, engineer, guardian, friend, looked out at the glowing city and knew he had found his true home. His heart, once heavy with solitude, now brimmed with hope and love. And as he stood between the sisters, who claimed him, he understood that this bond would carry him onward, across every star and through every challenge, forever and always.